a peaceful but assertive approach to communicating that with other people when I don't feel safe or comfortable.
Okay. Um, and I just might be interested to hear one more for now, and if there isn't any, that's fine. Uh, that's Karen.
Yes, my question also related but slightly different because in the last session she spoke about people knowing the intention of what the KTCC is. And I think if I do outreach beyond the bubble of people I know, I'm involved in 2 climate action groups, and I'm basically with people a lot who are on the same page as myself and have a lot of this information that we're going to be bringing up in the training. So if I assume I want to do outreach to, let's say, a more generic group where I don't know where people are at, my neighbors, my book club, my faith community, where you could get people that are all over the map, how do we kind of sell or explain the intention of the session? Because some people might think, oh, you're there, I don't want to come because you want to convert me, or I'm so nervous about climate change I don't even want to come. So like, I'm interested in outreach and having these conversations with people who are more unsure about it, because I feel like I'm meeting the people who want to talk about it all the time, because of where I hang out, and all the people I know in Toronto that are so involved. So, if the assumption is this can go to a more general group to get them started, or to assist them in how they can get started, how is that presented even before you get in front of the group? And then how do you manage it with a diverse group? That's a big question. But that's why I've come to this
And an
training.
important one, an
That's
important
why I've
one.
come to this training. So thank
Sure.
you.
Thank you, thank you. I'm just looking at my notes. I'm just going to take a moment to look at my notes and um, I, I'd like to start with Karen's. That's kind of an outer layer, but maybe we'll start with that, and we can play around. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to introduce a tool that I created that I wanted to share. And by the way, they're not allowing document share as far as I can see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my email in the chat, and if you decide you would like the documents, I'd be happy just that I'm going to share with you. I'd be happy to send them to you by email if you put e uh, your email in the chat. Um, or maybe you can email me because I'm not sure if once the session ends, I might not have access to that as well either. So minimum, you have my email. You can email me if you don't get it. Um, so what I'd like to offer to start off around Karen's thing is, can you see this? Give me a thumbs up. I can see, okay, I can see some people. So this is a facilitator's dashboard. And this is my attempt to give you a tool or support in terms of maybe some of the things to look at. I was thinking primarily around facilitating a group, but I think it could also apply to some of what Karen was talking about. So when I think of myself as facilitating a group, these are some of the things that I'm constantly trying to keep a sense of. Is there a sense of safety? How much along the dial are we following the purpose, achieving the purpose? Is there a sense of equity? You know, is there a balance in terms of how people are taking part, how people have access? Are people present? You know, are they hungry? They haven't eaten yet? Do they look like they're falling asleep? Do they look like they've been triggered and they're not able to focus because, you know, it's just too depressing to hear about another species that's on the decline? Um, Different things that are going on. So um, I find it helpful to have that. And, you know, Karen, when I think of what you started to talk about, you know, some of the things that come to me is um, one, maybe offering people some choice. You know, you might start by saying, hey, there's something I'd really like to talk to you about. There's something that I'm very enthusiastic about. I'd like to share with you. And, you know, would you be open for me to tell you a little bit about this group or this event that I'm hosting. So just to start off by, you're respecting them by saying, this is something I'd like to talk about. And if they give you a yes, you can at least know that you can go maybe 2 steps further. They might want to stop it after, 2 steps. But first of all, just that kind of a thing to me is a very powerful signal. It's like, hey, I'm not just going to throw this on you no matter how important it is. I want to see, would you like to hear about it? Something that's interesting and involves a group. And you might say a little bit. And then maybe say, I've told you a little bit, but before I go on, you tell me, is there something more I haven't talked about in this group, that you'd like to find out? Because, and you can be upfront, because I'd like to invite you, at the end of our talk, I'd like to invite you to come. So what would you like to know about this group? And so this, similarly of what I'm doing, is you follow them. You follow with what's of their interest, of what's of their concern, as opposed to telling them what you think might be of their interest. So one technique is to go with that, to start with, what would you like to know? What assurances would you like to know? Or sometimes people are hesitant to come to some of these groups because they think maybe it might be depressing. I'm wondering if you have any concerns about a group like this, before, I invite you. What might the concern be? It might be like, oh, this is too late for me. I can't get the bus home. This is going to be depressing. This is going to change my world, not change my... So, so you're doing a little bit of fact finding here in terms of like, what are your concerns? And then that gives you an opportunity to maybe to address them, by hearing that. So to me, those are some ways I think you could begin in terms of addressing, um, kind of starting the conversation. And early on, you could also find out if people are all over the map, and yeah, where are they at? Are they climate deniers? They're just denying in general. I don't want to face it. I'd love to do this. Thank God you asked me. Like, you can get a sense of that, and then depending on where they are, um, your response may not be to invite them to the group. Your response may be at a different level. It's the group, because my guess is the group is primarily not there to start with a climate denier. So you might want to do something with them one-on-one first, or you might think about like what's the group for, because it's not for everybody. And so if they're not part of the group that the group is for, then I think it's wonderful and empowering for you to then think about, well, hey, oh, gee, I don't have all the facts with me right now. Can I get back to you? Or, what would help you around this? Or what would you, so, that might help you with deciding whether to go further with involving them with a group. So, I'm going to pause there. I'm curious how any of that lands for you, Karen. I just, because you're
Okay, me
muted, I just...
specifically. It's helpful. It actually spawned another question, which is I wasn't sure about when we approach people about being involved in a KTCC, whether we're suggesting that it just be 1 or 2 times or that it's an ongoing thing. I'm not even sure of the model itself. Like, what are we asking people to commit to?
I can answer that. It's Anne here from Climate Fast. So the idea is that you would host a first conversation, suggest a second conversation to follow up, and then just sort of keep in touch with that group. So there is one sort of first ta-da conversation in which you would go through the different parts of the conversation. Alternately, you could split the conversation into 2 different, like, we'll cover this in the first part, 1 hour, and then another week we'll cover the next. But the idea is that you would then check back in with the group after a month. You might consider, if this is a group that has that they are a collective, and in some way, say it's a school council, I don't know, that you could, I don't know, develop some homework. So if they were interested in doing that, and then check back, how many of you were able to do X or Y. So it's sort of a mobilizing conversation. But then the idea is that you would maintain contact with the group and see where that went. So we're hoping to incubate, mobilize groups of people. Thanks.
And Maria, I have a few comments on some of the things that you were saying. In my day job, I give climate change awareness workshops to youth, mainly from equity-seeking groups who are training. It's a pre-apprentice program, and they're training to get into the construction industry. And the topic is how, as in the construction industry, they can contribute to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Well, one of the first things I do is go around the room and ask people to let the group know what they think about climate change. And so that gives me, as the facilitator, some sense of the room. And, if there might be somebody that is a climate denier, or maybe it's just somebody that fancies themselves as a contrarian and likes to argue for the sake of argument, because you will sometimes get folks like that. So that's a little trick to kind of help you read the room. And then when I start the presentation, I lead with the science. So I think in one of the groups earlier tonight, there was some focus on 1.5 degrees centigrade, and why is that so important? So that's something that could be addressed early on in a presentation. But what I also do is what is the greenhouse gas effect? So why it is that those gases, when they're trapped in the atmosphere, how they reflect heat or don't reflect heat. Sounds a little complicated, but there's lots of slides out there, and I'm sure Kitchen Table will be able to put together some resources to help you do it. Because if you have,
Steve, I'm gonna pause you there for a moment, because I appreciate the things you've shared, and I can see value in all the things you've shared so far. I'm wondering if you'd be okay. I'd like to have a chance to respond to Jessica and preferably Beth as well. And I'm wondering if you'd be okay with me doing that.
Sure.
Great, thank you. So Jessica was asking about clamming up when there's a conflict, and how to take a peaceful but assertive approach, particularly when maybe we don't feel safe. So what I would ask you to consider is then, first of all, how can you take care of yourself first? So maybe the need is for safety. And I love that you have that awareness. So maybe even before that, it's like even you have some sense. Oh, hey, I feel whatever, or I feel tense or whatever. So what could bring more of that into the situation? Because until you address that in some way, it's going to be hard to speak up. It's going to be hard to be assertive. It's going to be hard to be much of anything. So for me, it'd be like, what's up? What's most up? Maybe it's safety. And so what may help you with that, and that's different for each of us. That could be as simple as take a deep breath. It could be maybe calling for someone else to facilitate while you take a moment to reflect. I'm not sure, but I think the first thing would be just to say, hey, I have a need for safety. What can I do to address that? What can I do to bring myself back up to this level? And then as you're able to do that, for me, in terms of being assertive and yet peaceful, I would be interested in grounding in, why does this matter to me? Why does this matter to me? So it's going to be a little hypothetical, but let's say there's a conflict. Someone says, hey, I really think that we shouldn't care about the fossil fuel industry. We should just focus all our energies on solar panels. I don't know. There's some kind of a conflict. So for me, behind your position, why does this matter? And maybe it's because you think it's going to be more effective to address um, this or something like that. So another thing I'd like to share with you that I find helpful is this. This is a list of some of the basic needs that we share. And so I find it helpful to ground in that, both to allow me to be assertive, but all to allow me to express things in a peaceful way. So you might say, hey, I really disagree with you, and it's because one of the values that I stand for, or one of the values of doing it this way, would be effectiveness, or community, or equality. So to kind of be able to express a difference first from the need that you're trying to protect or to stand up for, or something like that. So I would say those are kind of two things that come to me. One is to take care of what's most up, and then the second is to begin to root in. Like if you're a tree, you could grow your roots down into the one that matters to you. It might be respect, it might be support, it might be community, and then come from that, and to see what words come out of your mouth from that. It's 9 o'clock. I was told that we had until 9, so I'm a little bit nervous. Normally I would check in with somebody like Jessica and I'd say, hey, how does that land for you? I'm gonna make a decision to skip that consciously, and just to see if I might be able to offer a response to Beth.
Henry, there is actually a time up there. It says remaining is 6 minutes and 4 seconds.
Thank you very much. That's very supportive, Margie. So when someone has a whole bunch of facts, or maybe they're contrarian, or they're challenging, or something like that, I would go back to this 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 dashboard. So what do they need, and what does the group need? And I would try to hold both of those things. What do they need? I'm guessing perhaps they need to be heard, maybe to be affirmed, maybe some acknowledgement. When people are doing what they're doing, what do they need? In this case, let's say a person who's saying, hey, let me show you this Facebook post I have that proves that climate change isn't as bad as we thought. Are you wanting to help us understand? What's your motivation at that level so one might be to acknowledge that at that level. So for me, I can connect to people and engage with people by acknowledging the healthy motivation behind something, even if I don't agree with them. Even I think their fact is totally baloney, or I whatever. I might just say, thank you for sharing that. It sounds like you really want the rest of us to understand how you're seeing it. Or thank you for sharing that. I wonder if you're wanting us to be reassured that things are not as bad as we think it is. So I'm just acknowledging, at that level, what might be the need or the motivation as one way to engage with them. And that could meet their needs in that way. And there's the group. So how does this affect the group? And so one might be, this doesn't meet the need of the group for equity and balance. I don't want to spend the entire time, a third of our meeting listening to one person. So I might say, and something else that's important to me, Jonathan, is that I'd like everyone to have a chance to share about how they are with this. And I acknowledge that we may have very different views. And so I might say that as a way of saying, hey, let's attend to some other people's needs, maybe for equity, equality, for sharing as well. So those are maybe two things that come up in me. One is offering them some acknowledgement, because they're trying to offer something, and I want to just acknowledge that. And I would also try to contain it, because it wouldn't serve the group's needs to have that just fill up. And one way to contain it is to say, hey, I'd like there to be some fairness in sharing. Jessica, Karen, and Anne, I haven't heard anything from you yet. Would one of you be willing to share something? And very likely what they'll share may be different and maybe counterbalance what that person shared. So I'd be looking at how this affects us as well. I'm going to pause there. We haven't, 2 minutes and 24 seconds. So I'd love to hear back and either any responses from the things I've shared, or if you want to maybe try to adjust something else in 2 minutes and 14 seconds.
Okay, a quick one. I give climate presentations for Climate Reality Project. That's the Al Gore organization. And I'm always, in his presentations, there's a real fear component. He delivers the science examples of catastrophe after catastrophe. And, it shakes you up. Then he ends his slide presentation with solutions and hopeful solutions and progress that we make. But it's very difficult to balance this delivering this fearful scenario of the possibilities. And I wrestle with how much to share. I mean, I want to be effective. I know it's not all about the presentation being a pleasant experience. It's not a vacation to hear the science. So it's just such a wrestling match to know how honest to be about how serious it is and how depressing and fear-inducing that is versus hopefulness, and how do I strike a balance? This is a difficult problem.
Yeah. What's coming to me is it's almost not an answer to you, but this is what's coming to me when I hear you say that. What comes to me is whether possibly it might be helpful for you to say exactly what you said at the very beginning of your presentation. So, and what you do in your presentation might be exactly the same, but what that's about is acknowledging to people, hey, what I share for some of you might be overwhelming or might put you off, or you're normalizing and acknowledging some of what's going to come up for people. I mean, when I saw that picture of that starved polar bear, I was like, oh my God, that's horrible. And part of me just wanted to just leave, because it's like, I don't want to see more images of starving animals.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if this is in any way a solution, but if you start with that, if you acknowledge that that's what's going on in you, because that's what will be going on in them, then maybe you might say, and part of what I'd love to do is I want to stay engaged with you. And so, either during this time, if you might have some choice, you might want to just check out for some time. The next 15 minutes is the fear part of my presentation. You have the choice to log out after 1 minute, 10 minutes, or 15 minutes and come back for the hope part of my presentation.
Mm-hmm.
So you're beginning to try and collaborate with people to how to titrate that, how to decide how much is enough for them.